The sunlight glinted off the barrel of the Winchester rifle as Lily Osborne stepped down from the stagecoach, dust swirling around her ankles in the hot Colorado air. She clutched her small valise tightly, scanning the crowded main street of Colorado City for the man who would be her husband, a man she'd never met, a stranger who'd agreed to marry her based on nothing more than a photograph and a few carefully penned letters. It was 1875, and Lily had traveled over 1,000 miles to escape a past that refused to stay buried. What Yancey Rutherford didn't know when he'd sent for a bride was that the woman arriving in Colorado territory had a $500 bounty on her head, dead or alive. Lily smoothed down her travel-worn dress, her slender fingers trembling slightly as she searched the faces in the crowd. Her eyes, deep green and wary, missed nothing, especially the tall figure lounging against the hitching post near Parker's General Store. Her heart stuttered. Was that him? The man straightened as their gazes met, and he removed his hat, revealing a shock of sun-bleached brown hair. He was taller than she'd expected, broad-shouldered and lean-hipped in the way of men who worked the land. His face was tanned and weathered, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. "Miss Osborne?" he asked, approaching her with long strides. "Mr. Rutherford," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. He nodded, stopping a respectful distance away. "Yancey Rutherford, welcome to Colorado City." Up close, his eyes were the color of the sky above the mountains, a clear, piercing blue that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed facade. Lily swallowed hard. Would he see the fear beneath her composed exterior? Would he somehow sense the danger that had followed her from Boston? "Your journey was comfortable, I hope?" he asked, reaching for her valise. "As comfortable as one might expect," Lily replied, reluctantly relinquishing her bag. "The stagecoach is not designed for luxury." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "No, madam, it surely is not." An awkward silence fell between them. Lily had rehearsed this moment 100 times during her long journey west, but now that it had arrived, she found herself speechless. This man, this stranger, was to be her husband. The thought was both terrifying and oddly comforting. If all went according to plan, marriage to Yancey Rutherford would provide her with protection, a new name, a fresh start. But that was before she'd realized that Pinkerton detectives had picked up her trail in Denver. "My ranch is about 5 miles outside of town," Yancey said, breaking the silence. "I've arranged for us to be married tomorrow, if that suits you. Pastor Mills is expecting us at 2 o'clock. Lily's heart raced. Tomorrow, so soon? Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty perhaps, or concern. "Unless you need more time, I understand this is all." "Well, it's unusual circumstances." "No," she said quickly. "Tomorrow is fine, I didn't expect everything to happen so quickly." Yancey nodded, studying her face. "You're tired. Let's get you settled at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house for the night. She's expecting you." As he guided her toward a modest 2-story house at the end of the street, Lily felt the weight of someone's gaze on her back. She resisted the urge to turn and look, knowing that paranoia was her constant companion now. But when they passed the sheriff's office, she couldn't help but glance at the wall beside the door where wanted posters hung in neat rows. Her breath caught in her throat. There, among the faces of outlaws and bandits, was a crude likeness of her own face staring back at her. "Is something wrong?" Yancey asked, noting her sudden pallor. "No," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired, as you said, Mrs. Henderson." Proved to be a plump, motherly woman who fussed over Lily, exclaiming over her journey and how thin she looked. After a hot meal and a warm bath, Lily found herself alone in a small but clean room at the top of the stairs. She sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing the tears she'd been holding back all day to fall. What was she doing here? How could she marry a good man, by all appearances, without telling him the truth? But the truth would send him running in the opposite direction, and then where would she be? A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. "Miss Osborne, it's Yancey Rutherford. May I have a word?" Hastily wiping her eyes, Lily crossed to the door and opened it a crack. "Mr. Rutherford, I apologize for disturbing you, but there's something I need to discuss with you." His expression was grave. "May I come in?" Propriety demanded she refuse, but the urgency in his voice convinced her otherwise. She opened the door wider, allowing him to step inside, though she left the door slightly ajar for the sake of appearances. "What is it?" she asked, her throat dry with fear. Had he discovered her secret already? Yancey removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "I saw you looking at the wanted posters outside the sheriff's office," he said without preamble, "and I saw your reaction to one in particular." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. His blue eyes held her steadily. "I think you do. The poster went up 2 days ago. Sheriff got a telegram from Boston." He paused. "It's you, isn't it? You're wanted for murder back east." The room seemed to tilt around her. Lily reached for the bedpost to steady herself. "I should have known I couldn't outrun it," she said, her voice barely audible. To her surprise, Yancey didn't back away or call for the sheriff. Instead, he gestured toward the small chair by the window. "Perhaps you'd better sit down and tell me the whole story." "Why?" "So you can decide whether to turn me in yourself." Bitterness edged her words. "No," he said simply. "So I can figure out how to protect you." Stunned, Lily sank onto the chair. "Protect me? You don't even know me. You certainly don't know what I've done." "I know you're the woman who wrote me honest, thoughtful letters for 6 months. I know you're the woman who agreed to marry a stranger and travel across the country to start a new life." His voice softened. "And I suspect you're a woman who's been deeply wronged." Something in his quiet confidence broke through her defenses. "My name really is Lily Osborne," she began. "I was a governess in Boston in the home of Senator Harrison Blake. His wife died 3 years ago, leaving him with 2 young daughters." She took a deep breath before continuing. "The senator, he had certain appetites. At first he left me alone, but then—" She faltered, the memories still raw. Understanding dawned in Yancey's eyes. "He forced himself on you." Lily nodded, unable to meet his gaze. "One night he came to my room. He'd been drinking heavily. When I refused him, he became violent. There was a struggle and he fell, hit his head on the corner of the dresser. He died instantly." "Self-defense," Yancey said. "Yes, but who would believe me? I was just a governess nobody. He was a powerful man with powerful friends. I fled that night with nothing but the clothes on my back. And the bounty hunters followed you west. Yes, I thought I'd lost them in Chicago, but it seems they've picked up my trail again." She finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with despair. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rutherford. I shouldn't have brought this trouble to your door. I'll leave at first light." Yancey shook his head firmly. "You're not going anywhere. But the plan stays the same. We get married tomorrow as scheduled." Lily stared at him in disbelief. "How can you say that? I'm wanted for murder." "There's a price on my head." A determined look hardened his features. "And anyone coming to collect it will have to go through me first." The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down her spine, not of fear, but of something else entirely. Something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. "Why would you do this for me?" she whispered. Yancey was quiet for a long moment. "I've spent most of my life alone, Miss Osborne. When I sent for a mail-order bride, I wasn't just looking for a wife, I was looking for a partner, someone to share my life with." His gaze held hers. "I may not know everything about you yet, but I know enough to recognize a woman of courage and character. If you're willing to give this marriage a chance, so am I." Lily felt tears well in her eyes. "Even knowing what follows me, especially knowing what follows you." He moved toward the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." As he turned to leave, Lily called after him. "Mr. Rutherford, Yancey, thank you." He paused, looking back at her with a slight smile that transformed his serious face. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Osborne. Let's see if we survive the wedding first." After he left, Lily sat for a long time in the quiet room, watching the shadows grow longer on the wall. For the first time since fleeing Boston, she allowed herself to feel something beyond fear, a tentative flicker of possibility. Perhaps, against all odds, she had found not just sanctuary but a man worth trusting with her heart. The morning of her wedding day dawned bright and clear, the Colorado sky an endless expanse of blue. Lily stood at the window of her room, watching as the town slowly came to life below. She had slept surprisingly well, as though Yancey's promise of protection had somehow lifted a weight from her shoulders. Mrs. Henderson had lent her a simple white dress that had belonged to her daughter, now married and living in Denver. It wasn't fancy, just a plain cotton frock with a bit of lace at the collar, but it was the closest thing to a wedding gown that could be managed on such short notice. A soft knock at the door announced Mrs. Henderson herself, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I picked these from my garden this morning," she said, handing them to Lily. "Every bride should have flowers on her wedding day." Lily touched the delicate blossoms, deeply moved by the woman's kindness. "They're beautiful, thank you." Mrs. Henderson smiled, patting Lily's hand. "Mr. Rutherford is a good man, one of the best in these parts. You're fortunate to have found each other." If only she knew the truth, Lily thought, but she merely nodded, unable to trust her voice. "He's waiting downstairs whenever you're ready," Mrs. Henderson continued. "No rush, mind you. It's your day, after all." After the older woman left, Lily took one final look at herself in the small mirror above the dresser. Her reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, thinner than she had been in Boston, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of long months of fear and exhaustion. But there was something else there too, a glimmer of determination that hadn't been present before. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. When she descended the stairs, Yancey was waiting at the bottom, dressed in his best clothes, a clean white shirt, dark vest, and trousers that looked as though they'd actually been pressed. He'd trimmed his beard and combed his hair, and the sight of him made her heart flutter in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "You look beautiful," he said simply. A blush warmed her cheeks. "Thank you," he offered his arm. "Ready." She placed her hand on his sleeve, drawing strength from his solid presence. "As ready as I'll ever be." The walk to the small white church at the edge of town seemed both interminable and far too short. Lily was acutely aware of the curious glances from townsfolk, some friendly, others merely speculative. Was her face familiar to them from the wanted poster? Did they wonder about this strange woman their neighbor was about to marry? The church was empty save for Pastor Mills, a thin, elderly man with kind eyes, and two witnesses, Mrs. Henderson and a weathered-looking man Yancey introduced as his nearest neighbor, Thomas Cooper. The ceremony itself was brief and straightforward, with the traditional vows exchanged in the quiet sanctuary. When Pastor Mills pronounced them husband and wife, Yancey hesitated only a moment before leaning down to place a gentle, chaste kiss on Lily's lips, their first physical contact beyond a handshake. The brief touch sent an unexpected warmth spreading through her. They signed the marriage certificate, with steady hands, Lily signing her real name for perhaps the last time, officially becoming Mrs. Rutherford. The document represented not just a marriage but her new identity, her fresh start. As they stepped out of the church into the bright afternoon sunlight, Lily felt a strange sense of unreality. She was married now, to a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. A man who knew her darkest secret and had married her anyway. "There's a small celebration at the boarding house," Yancey told her as he helped her into the wagon. "Mrs. Henderson insisted, just a few neighbors. I hope that's all right." Lily nodded, though the thought of facing more strangers made her stomach clench with anxiety. Of course. The small celebration turned out to be a gathering of about a dozen people, all curious to meet Yancey's mail-order bride. Lily found herself the center of attention, fielding questions about her journey west and her impressions of Colorado territory. She answered carefully, sticking to the story she and Yancey had agreed upon, that she was from Philadelphia, not Boston, had worked as a teacher, not a governess, and had no family left after losing her parents to influenza 2 years prior. Throughout the afternoon, Yancey remained close by her side, his steady presence a comfort as she navigated this new social terrain. She noticed how respected he was among his neighbors, how they deferred to him, and seemed genuinely pleased to see him married at last. "Been a long time coming," an older man named Jenkins told her, clapping Yancey on the shoulder. "This one's been alone too long. Ranch that size needs a woman's touch." As the afternoon wore on, Lily began to relax slightly, the immediate fear of discovery receding in the face of such ordinary pleasantries. But just as she was beginning to think they might actually pull this off, the door to the boarding house opened, and a new arrival stepped inside. The tall figure of Sheriff Daniel Morris filled the doorway, his badge glinting in the sunlight that streamed through the windows. His gaze swept the room before settling on Lily. Yancey's hand found hers, squeezing reassuringly as the sheriff approached them. "Rutherford," the sheriff nodded. "Heard you got married today. Congratulations." "Thank you, Sheriff," Yancey replied, his voice casual though his grip on Lily's hand tightened slightly. "This is my wife, Lily." The sheriff tipped his hat to her. "Madam, welcome to Colorado City." Lily forced a smile, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone in the room could hear it. "Thank you, Sheriff. It's a pleasure to be here." Sheriff Morris studied her face for what seemed an eternity, though it was likely only seconds. "You know, you look mighty familiar." "Have we met before?" "I don't believe so," Lily managed, her voice admirably steady despite her terror. "I've only just arrived from the east." The sheriff frowned slightly. "Must be thinking of someone else then." He turned back to Yancey. "Anyways, just stopped by to pay my respects." "You two enjoy your celebration." As he turned to leave, he paused, glancing back at Lily one more time. "Funny thing, got a telegram this morning about a woman wanted back east, supposed to be heading this way." He shrugged. "But she had dark hair, as I recall, not your pretty auburn shade." With that, he tipped his hat once more and left, leaving Lily light-headed with relief. Her hand went unconsciously to her hair, which she had indeed darkened with walnut dye during her journey west, a simple but effective disguise that had apparently worked better than she dared hope. Yancey leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "It's time we headed home." The word home struck Lily with unexpected force. Home. She hadn't had a real home in so long. They made their goodbyes amid good-natured teasing and well wishes, with Mrs. Henderson pressing a basket of food into their hands for later. Lily's small valise was loaded into the back of Yancey's wagon alongside wedding gifts from the townsfolk, a patchwork quilt, a set of tin plates, a small clock. As they left Colorado City behind, following a rutted dirt road that wound through rolling grassland toward distant mountains, Lily felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. The vast open spaces around them offered a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in months. "Are you all right?" Yancey asked after they'd been traveling for some time in companionable silence. Lily nodded. "Better than I expected to be. The sheriff." "Dan Morris is a good man, but not the most observant," Yancey said with a slight smile. "And he respects me enough not to look too closely at my business." "Do you think he suspects something?" Yancey shook his head. "If he did, he'd have said so directly. That's his way." He glanced at her. "But we should be prepared nonetheless. The bounty hunters who followed you from Denver won't be thrown off as easily." "How do you know about them?" "I have a friend who works at the telegraph office. He mentioned a wire asking about a woman matching your description." Yancey's hands tightened on the reins. "Two men arrived on yesterday's stage. They were asking questions around town before you arrived." Fresh fear washed over her. "They're already here." "Then we should continue exactly as we planned," Yancey interrupted firmly. "You're my wife now, legally and properly. You live on my ranch under my protection." His jaw set in a determined line. "If they want to take you, they'll have to go through me first." There it was again, that fierce protective instinct that both bewildered and moved her. "Why are you doing this? Truly? You could be risking your life for me." Yancey was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "When I was 12, my mother was attacked by a drifter who came to our farm asking for work. My father was away and I was too young, too small to stop what happened." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Lily could sense the old pain beneath the words. "She never recovered, not really. Died less than a year later." "I'm so sorry," Lily whispered. "The point is, I know what it means to be powerless against someone stronger, to have your life destroyed by violence." He finally looked at her, his blue eyes intense. "What happened to you in Boston, it wasn't your fault. And I'll be damned if I let you pay for defending yourself." Lily felt tears well in her eyes at the simple, absolute conviction in his voice. She had spent so long running, so long assuming she was entirely alone in the world, that his unwavering support seemed almost too much to bear. "Thank you," she said simply, unable to find words adequate to express her gratitude. They crested a small rise, and suddenly the landscape opened up before them, a wide valley cradled by distant mountains, with a winding creek cutting through its center. And there, nestled against a grove of cottonwood trees, stood a sturdy two-story house with a broad porch, flanked by a barn and several outbuildings. "Welcome to Cottonwood Ranch," Yancey said, a note of pride in his voice. "It's not much, but it's home." As they drew closer, Lily could see that the house was larger than it had first appeared, well-built and well-maintained, with curtains at the windows and a small kitchen garden to one side. It wasn't grand by Eastern standards, but compared to the tiny rooms and cramped spaces she'd inhabited since fleeing Boston, it looked like a palace. A large black and white dog came bounding from behind the barn, barking enthusiastically as the wagon approached. "That's Max," Yancey explained. "He's a good guard dog, but mostly he just likes having his ears scratched." As if to prove the point, Max immediately stopped barking when Yancey called his name, trotting alongside the wagon with his tail wagging furiously. They pulled up in front of the house, and Yancey set the brake before jumping down from the wagon seat. He came around to Lily's side, and after a moment's hesitation, held up his arms to help her down. "I suppose I should carry you over the threshold," he said, a hint of awkwardness in his voice. "That's the tradition, isn't it?" Before Lily could respond, he had lifted her from the wagon seat as though she weighed nothing at all, one arm behind her back and the other under her knees. Startled, she instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck to steady herself. Their faces were suddenly very close, and Lily became acutely aware of the strength in his arms, the warmth of his body against hers. Something shifted in his expression as he looked down at her, a softening around his eyes, a slight parting of his lips that made her heart beat faster. Then Max barked again, breaking the moment, and Yancey carried her up the porch steps and through the front door into her new home. The interior of the house was unexpectedly welcoming, clean and well-ordered, with simple but comfortable furnishings. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with a wooden rocking chair placed nearby. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with more volumes than Lily would have expected. "You like to read?" she asked as he set her gently on her feet. "Winter nights are long out here," he replied with a small smile. "Books are good company." He showed her through the house, the kitchen with its large wood-burning stove, the small dining room, and upstairs, 3 bedrooms and a surprisingly modern bathroom with an actual bathtub. "I had indoor plumbing installed last year," Yancey explained, noting her surprise. "There's a pump system that brings water up from the creek. Hot water takes some work, have to heat it on the stove, but it's better than hauling buckets." The largest bedroom was clearly Yancey's, with a massive oak bed that dominated the space. Lily hesitated in the doorway, suddenly acutely aware of what traditionally happened on wedding nights. Yancey seemed to sense her discomfort. "This room is yours now," he said quietly. "I'll take the smaller one across the hall." Lily stared at him in surprise. "But this is a marriage of convenience, Lily, of protection." His voice was gentle. "I made no other expectations when I offered to help you, and I have none now." Relief mingled with an unexpected twinge of disappointment. "Thank you. That's very considerate." An awkward silence fell between them, broken only when Max came bounding up the stairs to investigate the new arrival. The dog sniffed Lily's hand cautiously before apparently deciding she was acceptable, pushing his head against her palm in a clear demand for attention. Yancey laughed. "Seems you've made a friend." Lily scratched the dog behind the ears, grateful for the distraction. "He's beautiful." "I've always wanted a dog, but it wasn't possible in the city. He's a good companion." Yancey moved toward the door. "I should see to the animals. Make yourself at home. Your things are still in the wagon. I'll bring them up." After he left, Lily stood in the middle of the bedroom, her bedroom now trying to absorb the rapid changes in her life. 24 hours ago, she had been a frightened fugitive stepping off a stagecoach. Now she was a married woman with a home, a husband, even a dog. It was all happening so quickly that she could barely keep up. She moved to the window, which overlooked the ranch yard and the rolling grasslands beyond. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over everything, making the scene look like something from a painting. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. Yancey emerged from the barn, leading a large chestnut horse to a corral. Even from this distance, she could appreciate the easy way he moved, the confidence in his stride. She watched as he released the horse into the corral, then paused to scratch Max's head when the dog trotted up to him. What kind of man marries a stranger and risks everything to protect her? Lily wondered. And what kind of future could they possibly build together, with danger still looming on the horizon? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, Lily found herself in the kitchen, unpacking the basket Mrs. Henderson had prepared. There was freshly baked bread, a crock of butter, sliced ham, pickles, and a small cake decorated with sugar flowers, a wedding cake. She realized with a pang. Uncertain of what else to do, she began setting the table for supper. It was a normal domestic task, something she might have done in another life, and the simple act of arranging plates and cutlery provided an unexpected comfort. This was something she knew how to do, even if everything else in her world had been turned upside down. When Yancey came in from the barn, he stopped short at the sight of the table set for two, food laid out, and a lamp glowing warmly in the center. "You didn't have to do this," he said, looking genuinely surprised. Lily shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "It seemed the least I could do. Mrs. Henderson provided everything. I just arranged it." He washed up at the sink, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. When he sat down across from her, there was an awkward moment of uncertainty. Were they supposed to say grace? Should she serve him, as a wife would normally do? In the end, Yancey solved the dilemma by simply passing her the bread. "You must be hungry after all the excitement today." They ate in relative silence at first, both navigating the strange intimacy of sharing a meal as husband and wife when they were still, in many ways, strangers. But gradually, as the food disappeared and the initial awkwardness faded, conversation began to flow more naturally. Yancey told her about the ranch, how his father had claimed the land after the Civil War, building it up from nothing into a successful cattle operation. How he had taken over after his father's death 10 years ago, expanding the herd and improving the bloodlines. How the harsh winter 2 years past had nearly ruined him, but he'd managed to hold on when many neighboring ranches had failed. In turn, Lily shared carefully edited stories from her own life, her childhood in a small town outside Boston, her education at a ladies' seminary, her decision to become a governess after her parents' deaths had left her without means. "And the senator?" Yancey asked quietly. "How did you come to work in his household?" Lily's hand tightened on her fork. "His first wife was a distant cousin of my mother's. When she heard of my circumstances, she offered me the position teaching their daughters." She stared down at her plate. "She was kind to me. After she died, I stayed for the children's sake. They had already lost their mother. I didn't want them to lose their teacher as well." "And Blake, was he always?" "No," Lily admitted. "At first he was merely distant, grieving, I thought, but after a while—" She shook her head, unable to continue. Yancey reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly. "You don't have to talk about it." His touch was warm and reassuring, and Lily found herself unexpectedly moved by his consideration. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." After supper, they moved to the main room where Yancey built a small fire to ward off the evening chill. Max stretched out on the hearth rug, while Lily took the rocking chair and Yancey settled into a worn leather armchair. "We should discuss what happens next," he said after a moment. "The bounty hunters in town, they won't give up easily." Lily's momentary peace evaporated at the reminder of the danger still facing them. "No, they won't. $500 is a lot of money." "We have some advantages," Yancey continued, his tone thoughtful. "We're legally married now, which gives you a new name and identity. The ranch is isolated 5 miles from town, means we'll see anyone coming long before they arrive." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But we need to be prepared nonetheless. What do you suggest?" "First, you don't go to town alone, not until we're sure the bounty hunters have moved on." He held up a hand when she started to protest. "I know it limits your freedom, and I'm sorry for that, but it's necessary for now." Lily nodded reluctantly. "And second, you learn to shoot." She blinked in surprise. "I beg your pardon. Every rancher's wife in these parts knows how to handle a rifle," Yancey explained. "It's not just about self-defense, though that's part of it. There are wolves, mountain lions, and occasionally rustlers." He studied her face. "Have you ever fired a gun before?" "No," Lily admitted, "but I'm willing to learn." A hint of approval crossed his features. "Good, we'll start tomorrow." They talked a while longer, making plans for the days ahead. Yancey explained the routines of ranch life, the seasonal cycles of cattle breeding and calving, The challenges of maintaining the property through Colorado's harsh winters and hot summers. Lily found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about aspects of ranching that were entirely foreign to her Eastern upbringing. As the fire burned low and Max began to snore softly on the hearth rug, Yancey finally stood, stretching his tall frame. "It's getting late. You must be exhausted after everything today." Lily realized with some surprise that she was indeed tired bone weary in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. The emotional strain of the past 24 hours, combined with the lingering fatigue from her long journey west, had finally caught up with her. They ascended the stairs together, pausing outside the bedroom doors. "If you need anything during the night, don't hesitate to knock," Yancey said, his voice low in the darkened hallway. "I will. Thank you." Lily hesitated, then added impulsively, "Good night, husband." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features in the dim light. "Good night, wife." Inside her new bedroom, Lily changed into her nightgown and slid between the cool sheets of the large bed. It felt strange to be alone on her wedding night, though she was profoundly grateful for Yancey's respect of her boundaries. She had expected many things when she'd agreed to become a mail-order bride, but genuine consideration had not been among them. As she drifted toward sleep, her last conscious thought was that perhaps, just perhaps, she had found not just safety but the beginnings of something she'd never dared hope for: happiness. Dawn came early to Cottonwood Ranch, with pale light filtering through the curtains long before Lily was ready to face the day. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was: the unfamiliar bedroom, the too soft bed, the distant sounds of livestock instead of city noises. Then it all came rushing back. Colorado, the ranch, her marriage to Yancey Rutherford, and most importantly, the bounty hunters who might even now be closing in on her location. She dressed quickly in her simplest dress, hardly suitable for ranch work, she realized with dismay. Her wardrobe, limited to begin with, had been selected for her new life as a respectable rancher's wife, not for the practical demands of a working ranch. When she entered the kitchen, she found Yancey already there, frying bacon on the stove. The rich, savory aroma made her stomach growl, reminding her that despite her anxiety, her body still had basic needs. "Good morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "Coffee's hot if you want some." "Thank you." Lily poured herself a cup from the pot on the stove, surprised by the domestic scene. "I would have been happy to cook breakfast. I'm used to fending for myself," Yancey replied with a shrug. "Besides, I get up with the sun." "No sense in you rising at dawn too, at least not until you've adjusted to ranch life." They ate breakfast together: bacon, eggs, and biscuits that Yancey admitted had been left by Mrs. Henderson. "My cooking skills are limited," he explained with a wry smile. "I can manage the basics, but not much beyond that." "I'm a fair cook," Lily offered. "Nothing fancy, but I can certainly handle everyday meals." "That would be welcome," he admitted. "Though I don't expect you to take on all the household duties immediately. You need time to settle in." After breakfast, Yancey showed her around the ranch properly. The barn housed not only horses but a small milk cow and a few chickens. The corral adjacent to it contained 3 horses: Yancey's chestnut gelding, a sturdy plow horse, and a smaller, dappled mare. "That's Daisy," Yancey said, nodding toward the mare. "She's gentle, good for a beginner. When you're ready to learn to ride, she'll be your mount." "I've never ridden a horse," Lily confessed, eyeing the animal with trepidation. Even the small mare seemed enormous up close. "We'll start slow," he assured her. "But out here, knowing how to ride is as essential as knowing how to shoot. Speaking of which, after the tour of the ranch buildings, Yancey retrieved a Winchester rifle from the house and led Lily to a clearing behind the barn. He had set up several tin cans on a fallen log about 20 yards away. "This is a model 1873, he explained, holding out the rifle for her inspection. "Lighter than some with less kickback. Good for a beginner." Lily took the weapon gingerly, surprised by its weight despite Yancey's assurance that it was lighter. It felt alien in her hands, a lethal instrument that seemed at odds with everything she'd been raised to be. With patience and care, Yancey showed her how to hold the rifle properly, how to sight along the barrel, and how to squeeze, not pull the trigger. His hands were gentle as he adjusted her stance, his voice calm and encouraging. "Take your time," he advised. "Breathe in, then exhale slowly as you squeeze the trigger." Her first shot went wild, missing the cans entirely. So did her second and third. But on the fourth attempt, there was a satisfying ping as one of the cans flew off the log. "I did it," Lily exclaimed, surprised by her own excitement. "Well done," Yancey said, genuine approval in his voice. "Let's try a few more." By the end of the lesson, Lily had hit 3 more cans and was beginning to feel marginally more comfortable with the rifle. Her shoulder ached from the recoil, and her ears rang from the reports, but there was a strange satisfaction in mastering even this small aspect of her new life. "You're a natural," Yancey told her as they walked back to the house. "With a bit more practice, you'll be able to hit a wolf at 50 paces. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Lily replied, though she felt a flicker of pride at his praise. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of new experiences as Lily began to learn the rhythms of ranch life. She helped gather eggs from the henhouse, watched as Yancey milked the cow, a skill she would need to master eventually, and spent an hour in the garden, weeding the neat rows of vegetables that would sustain them through the coming months. By late afternoon, her back ached and her hands were dirty in a way they had never been in her previous life, but there was a strange satisfaction in the physical labor. This was real work, productive and necessary, so different from the ornamental education she'd received as a young lady of good family. After supper, a simple meal of salt pork and beans that Lily prepared, they again sat by the fire, Max at their feet. The dog had apparently decided that Lily was an acceptable addition to the household, following her from room to room throughout the day and occasionally nudging her hand for attention. "You've made a conquest," Yancey observed, nodding toward the dog. "He's usually more reserved with strangers." "He's a good judge of character," Lily replied, scratching Max behind the ears. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and Max's contented sighs. Outside, the wind had picked up, whistling around the eaves of the house and making Lily grateful for the solid walls surrounding them. "Tomorrow I need to ride out to check the north pasture fences," Yancey said eventually. "I'll be gone most of the day." Lily felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought of being alone at the ranch. "Is that safe? With the bounty hunters potentially looking for me?" "Max will stay with you," Yancey assured her, "and you've got the rifle, but I don't think they'll come here, not yet. They'll exhaust their search in town first." She nodded, trying to accept his logic. "What should I do while you're gone?" "Whatever you like. There are books, as you've seen. The garden needs attention. Or you could just rest. You've had quite an ordeal these past months." Rest. The concept seemed almost foreign after so long spent running, constantly looking over her shoulder. Could she actually allow herself to relax, even for a day? "I'll find something useful to do," she said finally. "Perhaps I could inventory the pantry. I noticed it's a bit disorganized." Yancey smiled. "By all means. I've never had much of a system. Just buy what I need when supplies run low." Another silence fell, but this one had a different quality, expectant almost. Lily found herself watching Yancey covertly from beneath her lashes. The firelight cast warm shadows across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the slight cleft in his chin. He was a handsome man, she realized, in a rugged, unpolished way. As if sensing her regard, Yancey turned to meet her gaze. Something flickered in his eyes, a heat that had nothing to do with the fire. For a breathless moment, Lily thought he might reach for her. Instead, he cleared his throat and rose from his chair. "It's getting late. I should turn in if I'm going to make an early start tomorrow." Disappointment pricked at her, though she quickly suppressed it. What was she thinking? Their arrangement was one of convenience, of protection, nothing more. "Of course," she said, keeping her voice light. "Good night, Yancey." He paused at the foot of the stairs, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Good night, Lily." After he'd gone upstairs, Lily remained by the fire, her thoughts in turmoil. She was grateful for Yancey's protection, for the sanctuary he had provided. But she couldn't deny that something else was developing between them, something that went beyond gratitude on her part and duty on his. The question was, what did she intend to do about it? And more importantly, what would happen when her past inevitably caught up with them? True to his word, Yancey was gone before dawn the next morning, leaving only a note on the kitchen table informing Lily that he'd taken lunch with him and would return before supper. Max, apparently under strict instructions to guard her, refused to leave her side all day, following her from room to room with watchful eyes. Lily spent the morning organizing the pantry, finding unexpected satisfaction in bringing order to the jumbled collection of canned goods, flour sacks, and preserved meats. By midday, she had everything neatly arranged and had compiled a list of supplies that needed replenishing. After a light lunch, she ventured outside, Max trotting faithfully at her heels. The day was warm but not unpleasant, with a gentle breeze rustling the cottonwood leaves. Lily wandered toward the small orchard behind the house, where a dozen apple trees were beginning to form tiny fruit. She was examining one of the trees when Max suddenly stiffened, his ears pricking forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Lily froze, her heart racing. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. The dog continued to growl, his gaze fixed on the road that led toward town. Straining her eyes, Lily could just make out a dust cloud in the distance, someone approaching on horseback. Fear gripped her. Was it the bounty hunters? Had they somehow discovered her location already? Her first instinct was to run back to the house to hide. But then she remembered the rifle Yancey had shown her how to use. It was hanging over the fireplace in the main room. "Come, Max," she commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. They hurried back to the house, and Lily took the rifle down with trembling hands. She checked that it was loaded, just as Yancey had taught her, then positioned herself by the window that overlooked the approach to the ranch. As the rider drew closer, she could see that it was a single man on a bay horse, not Yancey returning early. She raised the rifle, sighting along the barrel as she'd practiced, but her hands were shaking so badly that she doubted she could hit the broad side of a barn. Max continued to growl, his hackles raised as he stood protectively in front of her. The rider came to a stop in front of the house and dismounted. He was a tall, lean man with a drooping mustache, dressed in trail-worn clothes, not someone Lily recognized from town. "Hello, the house," he called out. "Anybody home?" Lily remained silent, her finger poised near the trigger. "Rutherford, you in there?" The man took a step toward the porch. "It's Jenkins from town. Got a message for you." Jenkins, the name was familiar. Hadn't there been a Mr. Jenkins at their wedding celebration? Lily tried to remember what he looked like, but her terror had clouded her memories of that day. "Mrs. Rutherford. Sheriff Morris sent me out, said it was important." At the mention of the sheriff, Lily's fear intensified. Had he recognized her after all? Was this a trap? Max's growling increased in volume, and the man on the porch hesitated. "I can hear your dog in there, madam. I know someone's home. I ain't here to cause trouble, just to deliver a message." Taking a deep breath, Lily called out, "What's the message?" "Sheriff wants Rutherford to know there's 2 men in town asking questions about a woman." The man Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. "They're offering money for information. Sheriff thought you should know." So the bounty hunters were actively searching now. Lily's mouth went dry. "My husband isn't here," she managed to say. "He's out checking fences." "I can leave the message with you, madam." "You've already delivered it," Lily replied. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins." The man touched his hat. "Sheriff also said to tell you that he ain't seen no woman matching their description around these parts. Said he made that real clear to them." A rush of confused gratitude flooded through Lily. The sheriff was protecting her, despite having seen the wanted poster. "Please thank Sheriff Morris for us," she said, her voice steadier now, "and for sending you all this way to warn us." Jenkins nodded, remounting his horse. "You tell Rutherford to watch his back, madam. These fellas didn't look like the type to give up easily." After he'd ridden away, Lily sank into the nearest chair, her legs suddenly weak with relief and residual fear. Max came to her side, whining softly and pushing his head against her hand. "It's all right, boy," she murmured, though she was far from certain that was true. The rest of the day passed in anxious anticipation. Every sound made her jump. Every rustle of wind through the trees sent her hurrying to the window. By the time the sun began to set, Lily was a bundle of nerves, pacing from room to room while Max watched her with concerned eyes. When she finally heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching, she grabbed the rifle again, positioning herself by the window. Only when she recognized Yancey's tall figure did she allow herself to relax, setting the weapon aside with shaking hands. She met him at the door, the words tumbling out before he could even dismount. "Mr. Jenkins came from town. The sheriff sent him. The bounty hunters are asking questions, offering money for information." Yancey's expression darkened as he swung down from his horse. "Are you all right?" "Did Jenkins see you?" "No, I mean, yes, I'm fine. And no, I didn't let him in the house." Lily took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "The sheriff told him to tell us that he hasn't seen any woman matching their description around here." Understanding dawned in Yancey's eyes. "Dan's a better man than I gave him credit for." "You think he knows about me?" Yancey shrugged, leading his horse toward the barn. "Maybe, but if he does and he's choosing to look the other way, that's good news for us." Lily followed him to the barn, still agitated. "What do we do now?" "If they're offering money, someone in town might talk. Mrs. Henderson knows I'm here, and Mr. Cooper and the pastor, none of them would betray us," Yancey said firmly, beginning to unsaddle his horse. "They're good people, loyal to their neighbors." "But $500 is a lot of money," Lily persisted. "Especially out here." Yancey paused, turning to face her. "Lily, I've lived in Colorado City for 10 years. These people aren't just neighbors, they're friends. They stood by me through drought and blizzard and everything in between." His voice was calm but absolute. "They won't sell you out for any amount of money." His certainty was reassuring, but Lily couldn't entirely quell her fears. "And if the bounty hunters come here anyway, then they'll have to go through me." The simple statement held no bravado, just quiet determination. "And I'm not easy to go through." Looking at him tall and strong, his face weathered by sun and wind, his eyes steely with resolve, Lily could believe it. In that moment, despite her lingering fears, she felt safer than she had in months. That night, After a quiet supper during which Yancey told her about his day checking fences and moving cattle to fresh pasture, they again sat by the fire. But the comfortable silence of the previous evening had been replaced by a palpable tension. "Tell me about Boston," Yancey said suddenly. "About what happened that night with Senator Blake." Lily stiffened. "Why, you know the essential facts. I want to understand what you've been through." His gaze was steady, compassionate rather than judgmental. "If I'm going to protect you properly, I need to know what we're facing." She was silent for a long moment, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. Finally, she began to speak, her voice low but clear. It was late after midnight. The children had been asleep for hours. I was reading in my room when he came in. She swallowed hard. He'd been drinking heavily, as he often did after his wife died, but that night was different. He'd never come to my room before. Yancey remained silent, giving her space to continue at her own pace. He said terrible things, about how I owed him for giving me a position in his household, how I should show my gratitude. Her hands twisted in her lap. When I refused, he became angry, violent. He tore my nightgown. A muscle twitched in Yancey's jaw, but he didn't interrupt. I fought back. I had to. Lily's voice strengthened with the memory. I wasn't going to let him. I couldn't. There was a struggle. He was drunk, unsteady on his feet. When I pushed him away, he fell backwards. His head hit the corner of the dresser. She closed her eyes briefly. There was so much blood. I tried to stop it, but he was already gone. "You did nothing wrong," Yancey said quietly. "I know that. Intellectually, I know that." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with anguish. "But I still took a life, Yancey. Whatever the circumstances, whatever he was trying to do, I'm responsible for his death." "No." His voice was firm. "He was responsible. The moment he entered your room with those intentions, he set events in motion." Yancey leaned forward, his gaze intense. "You defended yourself, as you had every right to do. The law doesn't see it that way. To them, I'm just a governess who murdered a respected senator. The law isn't always just." Yancey's expression hardened, especially for women. They fell silent again, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the wind had risen, whistling around the eaves of the house and rattling the windows. "What about you?" Lily asked eventually. "You know all about my past now, but I know very little about yours, beyond what you've told me about the ranch." Yancey seemed surprised by the question. "Not much to tell. I grew up here, worked the land with my father until he died, then took over the ranch. No sweetheart, no one you considered marrying before you sent away for a mail-order bride." A shadow crossed his face. "There was someone once, Emily Peterson. Her father owned the mercantile in town. What happened? She died. Influenza epidemic 6 years ago." His voice was flat, emotionless, but Lily could sense the old pain beneath the words. "After that, I didn't much see the point in courting anyone else. The ranch was enough." "Until it wasn't," Lily observed softly. He glanced at her, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "A man gets tired of talking to his dog after a while. No offense, Max." The dog, hearing his name, thumped his tail against the floor but didn't open his eyes. "And now," Lily asked, "do you regret your decision? To send for a bride, I mean. You hardly bargained for all this trouble." Yancey was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the firelight. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret it." Something in his tone made Lily's heart beat faster. "Even though our marriage is just an arrangement, is that all it is?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them, charged with possibilities. Lily found herself unable to look away from his gaze, which had grown intense, almost hungry. "I don't know," she whispered truthfully. Yancey rose from his chair and crossed to where she sat. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Lily, I married you to protect you, yes, but even in these few days—" He hesitated, seemingly struggling to find the right words. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone meeker, perhaps, less spirited." A small smile touched his lips. "Certainly someone less brave." "I'm not brave," Lily protested. "I've spent months running, hiding." "You survived," Yancey corrected. "You traveled halfway across the country alone. You rebuilt your life from nothing." "That takes courage." His thumbs traced gentle circles on the backs of her hands. "And now you're learning to shoot, to adapt to a life that must be completely foreign to you." His nearness was intoxicating. Lily could feel the warmth of his body, smell the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. "I want this to be a real marriage, Lily," he said softly. "Not just on paper, but only if that's what you want too." The honesty in his eyes undid her. For months, she had been alone, afraid, trusting no one. And now this man, this good, honorable man, was offering her not just protection but a true partnership, a chance at happiness she'd thought forever lost to her. "I want that too," she whispered. Yancey's hands tightened on hers, and then he was leaning forward, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with a hunger that matched her own. Lily's arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer, reveling in the solid strength of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Yancey rested his forehead against hers. "I'll still take things as slow as you need," he murmured. "There's no rush." Lily smiled, a genuine smile that felt foreign on her face after so many months of fear and worry. "I appreciate that. But I think we've both been alone long enough, don't you?" In answer, he kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. This was a beginning, Lily realized, not just of their marriage in truth, but of a life she had never dared hope for. A life of safety, of partnership, perhaps even of love. Later, much later, as they lay together in the large bed that was now truly theirs, Lily listened to Yancey's steady breathing beside her and felt a peace she had almost forgotten existed. Outside, the wind still howled, and somewhere in the darkness, danger might be approaching. But for tonight, at least, she was safe. She was home. The next few weeks passed in a blur of newfound domestic harmony as Lily and Yancey settled into life as a true married couple. Each day brought new discoveries about ranch life, about each other, about the surprising joy they found in small, shared moments. Lily learned to milk the cow with varying degrees of success, to ride Daisy slowly at first, then with growing confidence, and to bake bread in the temperamental wood-burning stove. Yancey taught her to shoot with increasing accuracy, to identify different bird calls, and to predict the weather by watching the clouds over the distant mountains. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch watching the sunset, or read by the fire, or simply talk, sharing the stories of their lives before they'd met, filling in the gaps in their knowledge of each other. They were building a marriage piece by piece, day by day, and Lily found herself happier than she had ever expected to be. But the shadow of her past never entirely disappeared. Each trip Yancey made to town brought news of the bounty hunters, who remained in Colorado City, asking questions and showing Lily's photograph to anyone who would look. Sheriff Morris continued to maintain that he had seen no one matching their description, but tensions in town were growing. "They're offering $700 now," Yancey reported grimly after returning from one such trip. "They've raised the bounty." Lily's stomach clenched with fear. "700, that's a fortune out here." "It just means they're getting desperate," Yancey said, though his expression remained troubled. "No one's talking, but they're not giving up either. How long can they afford to stay in town? Surely they have other bounties to pursue." Yancey shook his head. "I don't think these are ordinary bounty hunters, Lily. From what the sheriff says, They're more like private investigators hired specifically to find you." "By whom?" Lily whispered, though she already knew the answer. "Senator Blake's family, most likely. His brother is a powerful man in his own right, and they want justice, or what they see as justice, for his death." The thought chilled her. If these men had been hired specifically to find her, they wouldn't give up easily. And $700 would be a powerful temptation, even to the most loyal neighbor. "Perhaps we should leave," she suggested. "Go further west California, perhaps, or north to Montana Territory." Yancey's jaw tightened. "This is our home, Lily. My father built this ranch from nothing. I won't be driven away by threats." He took her hands in his. "Besides, running didn't solve the problem before. What makes you think it would work now?" He was right, she knew. Running had only postponed the inevitable confrontation. Sooner or later she would have to face her past. "Then what do we do?" she asked. "We live our lives," Yancey said simply. "We don't hide, don't cower, but we stay vigilant." He squeezed her hands reassuringly. "And we trust in our friends." Those friends proved their worth a week later when Mrs. Henderson sent word via a ranch hand that the bounty hunters had been asking specific questions about Yancey and his new bride. "They know I'm here," Lily said, panic rising in her throat. "Someone must have told them." "Not necessarily," Yancey replied, though his expression was grim. "I'm one of the few men in the county who recently acquired a bride from back east. It wouldn't take much detective work to connect those dots." "What happens now?" Yancey was silent for a long moment. "Now we prepare," he said finally, "because they'll be coming." The preparations were simple but thorough. Yancey reinforced the locks on the doors and shutters. He positioned rifles at strategic points throughout the house, one by the front door, one in the kitchen, one upstairs in their bedroom. He taught Lily how to load and fire his revolver, a weapon easier to handle at close range than the rifle. "I don't want to kill anyone," she whispered as she practiced drawing the pistol from the holster Yancey had adapted to fit her smaller frame. "Neither do I," he replied. "But I won't let them take you, Lily. Not while I'm breathing." The resolve in his voice should have been frightening. Instead, Lily found it deeply comforting. For the first time in her life, someone was standing between her and danger, not because she was helpless, but because she was valued. Because she was loved. The realization struck her with sudden clarity as she watched Yancey instructing Max on new commands designed to alert them to approaching strangers. She loved this man, this stubborn, honorable, gentle cowboy who had taken her in when she had nothing and no one, who had married her to protect her, and in doing so had given her not just a new name but a new life. The knowledge settled in her heart like a warm ember, glowing steadily through the fear and uncertainty of their situation. That night, as they lay together in the darkness of their bedroom, Lily turned to Yancey, her hand finding his beneath the covers. "I love you," she said simply. Even in the dim light, she could see his eyes widen, then soften. "I love you too, Lily. More than I thought possible after such a short time." She nestled closer to him, drawing comfort from his solid warmth. "If anything happens, nothing's going to happen," he interrupted firmly. "But if it does," she persisted, "I want you to know that these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. Whatever comes next, I don't regret any of it." Yancey's arms tightened around her. "Nothing's going to happen," he repeated, "but for what it's worth, I feel the same way." They made love slowly, tenderly, with a bittersweet intensity born of the knowledge that their happiness was threatened. Afterwards, Lily lay awake long after Yancey had fallen asleep, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch at night, the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through the cottonwood trees, the occasional howl of a coyote in the hills. This was home now, and she would fight to keep it. The bounty hunters came 3 days later. Lily was in the garden, harvesting early summer vegetables for supper, when Max began to bark sharp, aggressive barks unlike his usual greeting. She straightened, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and saw 2 riders approaching from the direction of town. Her heart began to pound. Yancey was in the north pasture, at least an hour's ride away. "Max, come," she commanded, her voice steady despite her fear. The dog obeyed immediately, positioning himself between Lily and the approaching riders. She walked calmly toward the house, forcing herself not to run, not to show fear. Inside, she quickly barred the door and retrieved the rifle from its place by the fireplace. Then she positioned herself at the window, where she could see without being easily seen. The riders stopped in the yard, studying the house with calculating eyes. One was tall and lean, with a narrow face and cold eyes. The other was shorter but powerfully built, with a scar running down one cheek. Both wore dusty trail clothes and had pistols prominently displayed on their hips. "Mrs. Rutherford," the taller man called out. "We'd like a word with you, madam." Lily remained silent, her grip tightening on the rifle. "We know you're in there," the man continued. "We just want to talk. There's been a misunderstanding back east that we'd like to clear up." "No misunderstanding," Lily called back, her voice stronger than she felt. "Please leave my property." The men exchanged glances. "I'm afraid we can't do that, madam. We have a job to do. Best if you come with us peacefully." "I'm not going anywhere with you." The scarred man dismounted, his hand moving toward his pistol. "I don't think you understand your situation, Mrs. Rutherford, or should I say Miss Osborne," so they knew for certain. Lily's mouth went dry. "My husband will be back any minute," she lied. "He won't take kindly to trespassers." "Your husband's checking fence lines in the north pasture," the tall man said with a cold smile. "We passed one of your neighbors on the road. Very helpful fellow." Lily's blood ran cold. Someone had betrayed them after all. "Now, Miss Osborne, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, but you are coming back to Boston with us." The scarred man took a step toward the porch. "Senator Blake's brother is very eager to see justice done." "There will be no justice in Boston," Lily replied, raising the rifle so they could see it through the window. "Only a kangaroo court and a hanging." The men hesitated, eyeing the rifle. "You willing to add more murder charges to your record?" the tall one asked. "If I'm defending my home." "Absolutely." Lily sighted along the barrel, aiming at a spot between the scarred man's feet, and fired. The man jumped back with a curse as dust and splinters exploded from the porch boards. "Next one won't miss," Lily warned, quickly reloading as Yancey had taught her. The men retreated to their horses, conversing in low tones. After a moment, they mounted up and rode a short distance away, stopping beneath the shade of a large oak tree at the edge of the property. "They're not leaving," Lily muttered to Max, who continued to growl low in his throat. "Just waiting for Yancey to return." She considered her options. She could try to slip out the back door, make her way to the barn, and ride Daisy to find Yancey. But if the men were watching closely, they'd see her leave. And she wasn't confident enough in her riding abilities to outpace them if they gave chase. Better to stay put, keep them at bay with the rifle, and wait for Yancey to return naturally. He would be home by supper time at the latest. The standoff continued as the afternoon waned. The bounty hunters remained under the oak tree, occasionally passing a canteen between them, clearly settled in for a wait. Lily kept watch from the window, the rifle never far from her hands. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch yard, she heard what she'd been waiting for, the sound of hoofbeats approaching from the north. Yancey. The bounty hunters heard it too. They straightened in their saddles, hands moving to their weapons. Lily's heart raced. if they ambushed Yancey as he rode in. Without hesitation, she threw open the front door and stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. "Yancey!" she shouted at the top of her lungs. "Bounty hunters!" Under the oak, the men cursed, spurring their horses toward her. But before they could reach the house, Yancey came galloping into the yard from the north, his own rifle drawn and ready. "That's far enough," he called out, his voice ringing with authority. He positioned his horse between the bounty hunters and the porch where Lily stood. "This is private property. You're trespassing," the tall man sneered. "We're here on official business, Rutherford. This woman is wanted for murder in Massachusetts. We have the legal authority to take her back." "Show me your papers," Yancey demanded. The men exchanged glances. "We don't need papers. There's a bounty, then you're not law officers," Yancey cut in. "Just men looking to make money by kidnapping my wife." "She's a fugitive. She's my wife," Yancey repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Legally married under Colorado law. And she's not going anywhere with you." The scarred man drew his pistol. "Don't be a fool, Rutherford. There's two of us and one of you, and $700 says she's coming with us." "Anyone who wants to take her will have to go through me first," Yancey said, his rifle unwavering. The tension in the yard was palpable, a gathering storm about to break. Lily held her breath, the rifle steady in her hands despite her fear. "This doesn't have to get ugly," the tall man said after a moment. "We're just doing a job, but $700 is $700. Worth taking a risk for. And is it worth dying for?" The new voice came from behind the bounty hunters, causing them to whirl around in surprise. Sheriff Morris sat on his horse at the edge of the yard, his deputy beside him. Both had rifles trained on the bounty hunters. "Sheriff," the tall man began, "this is a misunderstanding. Only misunderstanding is you thinking you can come into my county and threaten my people," Morris interrupted coldly. "Lower your weapons. Now." After a tense moment, the bounty hunters complied, slowly holstering their pistols. "Good." The sheriff nudged his horse forward. "Now, as I understand it, you gentlemen are looking for a fugitive, a woman from Boston with dark hair and green eyes." "That's right," the scarred man said, glaring at Lily. "And she's standing right there." Sheriff Morris made a show of studying Lily. "Mrs. Rutherford? No, I don't think so. Mrs. Rutherford is a respectable rancher's wife who's lived in these parts for." He glanced at Yancey. "How long has it been now?" "Going on 2 years," Yancey replied without hesitation. "That's right, 2 years." The sheriff turned back to the bounty hunters. "Your fugitive from Boston couldn't possibly be Mrs. Rutherford. Simple case of mistaken identity." The tall man's face reddened with anger. "This is obstruction of justice. We'll report this to federal authorities." "You do that," Morris said calmly. "In the meantime, you gentlemen are no longer welcome in Colorado City or Gunnison County. I suggest you move on. Now." For a moment, it seemed the bounty hunters might resist. Then, with venomous glares at Lily, they turned their horses and rode slowly away. "Deputy Collins will escort you to the county line," the sheriff called after them. "Just to make sure you don't get lost." Only when the bounty hunters had disappeared down the road, the deputy following at a discreet distance, did Lily lower her rifle, her hands finally beginning to shake with delayed reaction. Yancey dismounted and was at her side in an instant, his arm going around her waist to steady her. "Are you all right?" she nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Sheriff Morris approached, dismounting with a weary sigh. "They've been making a nuisance of themselves in town for weeks. Thought it was about time I ran them off." Yancey extended his hand to the sheriff. "Thank you, Dan. I won't forget this." Morris shook the offered hand. "Don't mention it. I owe you one from that business with the rustlers last year." He glanced at Lily, his expression softening slightly. Besides, I've never had much patience for bounty hunters, especially ones chasing a woman who was clearly defending herself. Lily's eyes widened. You know, I can read, the sheriff said dryly. The wanted poster mentioned the circumstances at least, the Blake family's version of them. Wasn't hard to read between the lines. He studied her face. A man like Senator Blake with his reputation. Well, let's just say I'm not surprised by what happened. Will they come back? Yancey asked. The bounty hunters, Morris shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. Men like that usually follow the path of least resistance. If they think they'll face opposition here, they might decide the bounty isn't worth the trouble. He adjusted his hat. But I'd stay vigilant if I were you, at least for a while. After the sheriff had gone, Lily and Yancey stood together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I thought they had you, Yancey said quietly, his arm still around her waist. When I heard you shout. I'm fine, Lily assured him, leaning into his embrace. Thanks to you and the sheriff. You did pretty well yourself, holding them off with that rifle. Pride colored his voice. You're quite a woman, Lily Rutherford. I was terrified, she admitted. But I wasn't going to let them take me without a fight, not now that I have someone worth fighting for. Yancey turned to face her, his hands coming up to frame her face. They won't come back, and if they do, they'll find the same reception. He kissed her gently. This is your home now. No one's going to take you from it. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Lily finally allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, her nightmare was truly over. The bounty hunters had been driven away. The sheriff was on their side. And Yancey, steady, reliable Yancey, had proved yet again that his promise of protection was absolute. What happens now? She asked softly, her head resting on his chest. His hand stroked gently through her hair. Now we live, Lily. We build our life together. We put the past behind us and look to the future. Just like that, just like that. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Though I was thinking maybe we could start by adding a room to the house. A small one with a window facing east to catch the morning sun. Lily raised her head to look at him, puzzled. What for? A smile played around Yancey's lips. Well, it might be a bit premature, but a nursery would be nice, don't you think? Understanding dawned, and with it a surge of joy so intense it took her breath away. A nursery, she repeated, her voice catching. Yes, yes, I think that would be very nice indeed. As Yancey pulled her closer, his kiss a promise of all the tomorrows stretching before them, Lily knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety but a true home. A place where she belonged. A love worth any risk. The bounty hunters might return. The shadow of her past might never completely disappear. But with Yancey by her side, she would face whatever came with courage and hope. Because some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for even. And what they had built together, this unexpected, precious love, was certainly one of them. 2 years later, Lily sat on the porch of Cottonwood Ranch, watching as Yancey taught their son, Thomas, to pet Max gently. The boy, just past his first birthday, giggled delightedly as the aging dog licked his face. Easy, Tom, Yancey cautioned, his voice warm with affection. Max is an old fellow now, be gentle. Lily smiled, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly where their second child grew. The past 2 years had brought changes she could never have imagined that day. She stepped off the stagecoach in Colorado City, a mail-order bride with a price on her head and terror in her heart. The bounty hunters had never returned. Whether deterred by Sheriff Morris's warning or simply lured away by easier prey, they had vanished from Colorado territory, taking with them the immediate threat to Lily's safety. 6 months after their departure, a letter had arrived from a lawyer in Boston, informing Lily that Senator Blake's brother had died unexpectedly of a heart ailment. With his passing, the family's pursuit of justice for the senator's death had apparently been abandoned. The bounty had been withdrawn. She was free, truly free, for the first time since that terrible night in Boston. The knowledge had been like a weight lifted from her shoulders. Though she and Yancey had built a good life together despite the lingering shadow of her past, the certainty that she would never have to look over her shoulder again had brought a peace she hadn't realized she was missing. With that peace had come the confidence to put down deeper roots, to start a family, to embrace fully the life she and Yancey were creating together. "Penny for your thoughts," Yancey said, coming to sit beside her on the porch swing, little Thomas cradled in his arms. Lily smiled, leaning into his solid warmth. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. How lucky I am." "Lucky?" Yancey raised an eyebrow. "I'd call it strength, courage, determination. You made your own luck, Lily." "We made it together," she corrected, taking his hand in hers. "That day in Mrs. Henderson's boarding house when you discovered who I really was. You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you." "I would have blamed me," Yancey replied simply, "and I would have missed out on the best thing that ever happened to me." He glanced down at their son, who had fallen asleep against his chest, and then at the subtle curve of Lily's abdomen. "On all the best things." Lily followed his gaze, a deep contentment settling in her heart. From the ashes of her old life, something beautiful had grown, something she had never dared hope for in those dark days of running and hiding. A home. A family. A love that had proved stronger than fear, stronger than the past, stronger even than the law. "I love you, Yancey Rutherford," she said softly. He smiled, the expression lighting his blue eyes with a warmth that still made her heart skip a beat. "And I love you, Lily Rutherford, always will." As the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the Colorado sky in shades of gold and purple, Lily knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety but true happiness. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but the destination, this life, this love, had been worth every step. And whatever the future held, they would face it together.